Sam, there has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
An awakening? Are you talking about that Star Wars deal, the sci-fi IP with those little teddy bears?
Wait, what? No, Sam, I'm not talking about those history movies. Dude, did you seriously not get the space memo? There have been goddamn scarabs crawling all over the place. How could you have possibly missed it?
Yeah, Mitch, I don't know how many times I got to tell you, but I cannot read space hieroglyphics.
Well, strap yourself in, Sam, because the tomb worlds are stirring and the long dormant Necrons have finally arisen. Hello listeners and welcome to the Tyrantcast. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm pleased to present you with the 6th episode of a podcast style, primarily audio discussion topic centric video series. And for today's episode I'm joined as ever by the Warmaster. So Sam, how are you and what's new since last we met in the Traxxas sector?
Dude, the Necrons got announced. What?
Well, today we're going to be talking about just that. We recently got an incredibly exciting recent preview article which has finally unveiled the 8th, presumably final faction to be added to Conquest LCG, the Necrons. So, I've already published a video clearly delineating my thoughts on the faction in my traditional, painfully articulate, sterile, and eloquent way, but the Tyrantcast is always a great opportunity for me to relax a little bit. So, Sam, I've already said my piece elsewhere, but why don't you introduce us to the overall premise of our article?
Yeah, we got the Necrons, baby. They look good. New faction, new big box. The interesting little note, too, before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of things, is that they said it was going to be on retailer shelves in the first quarter of 2016.
Right.
So if that's true, then this is going to kind of like follow that Game of Thrones announcement where they're going to drop in big boxes wherever they want to and not be like tied to this cycle schedule with them.
Sure. And we've seen articles edited before, but it's been a few days since the release, and they haven't changed the text yet, so hopefully that'll end up happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see this. You know, if at the rate we're going, best case scenario, you're going to see the 4th pack of this cycle, you know, in early March or something like that, if they stick to this kind of like 4 to 5, you know, week or monthly schedule. So this means that this could be coming out no later than March, which would be before the most likely 5th pack. So, yeah, kind of mid-cycle drop. But I think it's fine by me. I mean, you don't want to get in a situation where the 6-pack comes out in May, and now we're back to where we were last year, right? Where they hold off the big box for like Gen Con or something, right?
Sure.
So it gives me hope that there'll be a 3rd big box, like maybe in Gen Con, like not public release at that time of the year, but you know, early release for those guys, and everybody else gets in the fall. So yeah, pretty cool. I got to say the artwork on all these Necrons is great. I mean, I know this is a podcast, but whatever. You know, check out the artwork; it's very cool. So I guess now, you know, we kind of get into like the nuts and bolts, the meat of the article, and kind of how this faction, or what we know about how this faction will work. It seems like the way they ally is very cool. They have this, I guess, you know, how they make it work fluff-wise. They call it enslave mechanic, and, you know, they can enslave any army unit on the wheel that's common, you know, not loyal.
Right.
So no supports, no event, right? Isn't that right? No supports, no events, no attachments.
Yeah, basically the way it works is, similar to the Tyranids, the Necrons have unique ally rules. You can pick any of the original 7 factions to include cards of in your deck plus neutral cards, but for any of those 7 factions, you're strictly limited to non-loyal units. So like you're saying, no attachments, no supports, no events, all that stuff, you've totally got to rely on what the Necrons have at their disposal and neutral cards, but you've got an incredible range of units, but there's a little bit of a trick into putting them into play. So, you talked about the enslavement mechanic. What exactly is the enslavement dial?
Well, they've got like a picture of it, and like you can't quite exactly tell how it might move or rotate around, but it looks like it's this little dial, just the size of like a servo skull, and you can, at the beginning of each turn, you set that dial to a non-Necron faction,
Right.
and then you can only deploy units from that faction that deploys it. And then you can change it again at the start of the next turn. So
yeah, it's like at the onset of the deploy phase, the article says you set your dial and then you can only play units from that faction. Something I'm really curious about is because sometimes the way that these articles are written, it's obviously not a rules guru that's writing these. It's kind of a hype guy. So I really wonder if, by play, if it's going to be you can only deploy units of that faction, or you can use effects to put cards into play. Like, it would be interesting if you could kind of use various card effects to kind of cheat that mechanic a little bit. Like, put into play a Dark Eldar unit that puts a Space Marine or something like that into play in the middle of combat. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there could be, I don't know, something like where you get non-Necron units from your discard pile back into your hand.
Right.
And then you could play, or not back into your hand, back onto the table or something, right? So
Sure.
Yeah. We'll see.
I guess what we've seen so far, this awesome article included a ton of cards in it, but what are some themes that kind of run throughout the Necrons? Like, what differentiates them from the rest of the pack? We've already seen 7 other factions. What is there left that could possibly be unique about these guys?
Well, I mean, I think they seem difficult to kill, right? There's this Reanimating Warriors. He's a 3-cost, 1 command hammer, 2/2. And it says, interrupt, when this unit would be destroyed by taking damage, remove all damage from it and move this unit to an adjacent planet instead.
Right.
Like, that's limit once per phase, but that is ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
There's only a few cards that would remove this unit, outside of damage. I mean, maybe Exterminatus or Doom or Sowing Chaos, or like if he was alone at a planet and they played what's the Swarmlord one? The
Indescribable Horror?
No, the one where you like sack a unit at every planet or whatever.
Oh, Consumption.
Yeah, Consumption.
Just the Tyrannid faction.
Right, yeah. Well, that's true. It's not an old one-eye Swarmlord card, but I've seen an old one-eye, so there's a few cards, like out of the hundreds and hundreds of cards, that can take care of this guy.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're just going to be moving them down the line. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. You play 1 to 3 copies of the Reanimating Warriors at Planet 1. If they end up destroyed, they show up at Planet 2. Maybe they fight a battle there. Maybe the next round happens. And then, they're at the first planet again. So I think they're fantastic. You're certainly paying a little bit of a premium for a relatively kind of sissy unit, but good luck getting rid of it. I guess Aatrox Prime blasting a player's HQ might be a convenient opportunity to destroy it because it has to move to an adjacent planet. There's no planet adjacent to a player's HQ, but as just an example of a potential Necron thing, that is fantastic. And I think something really important to keep in mind is that in this deluxe expansion, all of these big box sets, these are never going to rotate out. So this is the designers being conservative. They aren't taking any crazy risks. Like, these aren't Klavex War Leader power tier cards that we're seeing. these are going to be like staples that'll be around for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So, like, these things look pretty fun, and we'll get to them later, but there's some other cards in here that are non-Necron that look pretty fun, and it's nice to know they'll be around, forever. So, I think, don't you think, like, one of the other things, too, is kind of like how they interact with, like, their discard pile, right? This is something that's not, like, brand new, because there is some recursion in this game, but it looks like this is going to be, like, the recursion faction, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't surprise me, because when I played Warhammer Invasion, the undead were the same way, and it just makes sense. So these are kind of like the undead of the far future. So
Right. I was going to say, it's almost as if there's some pretty close parallels between Warhammer 40K and Warhammer Fantasy.
yeah,
Go figure.
Go figure. Although, I think someone brought this up on Facebook the other day. Like, we are still a little sad that the space dwarves, these squats, they've gotten retconned out of the 40K canon. So,
Well, we could see a ninth faction someday. Who knows?
yeah, maybe there'll be like a neutral squat unit, just like one. It's kind of like a nod and a wink, like a breaking the fourth wall to the Conquest players.
Sure. I mean, the Astra Militarum already have abhumans, so I can't see why not.
Right.
But, you mentioned discard pile interaction. What's an example?
They have this really great one-cost card called I'm not going to pronounce it right, Canoptek, whatever. I don't know. I don't speak. I already told you I can't read hieroglyphics. So,
All right.
What's it called, Mitch?
I would go with Canoptek, but I don't speak Necron, so I don't know.
Right. We'll just call it the Scarab Swarm, because it's the something Scarab Swarm. And it's a one-cost unit. It has no command, but it's a 2/2 for 1, and it has this. It's a drone traded card. And has this great interrupt: when the unit is destroyed, return a target Necron unit from your discard pile to your hand. So, here you're getting a 2/2 for $1, and when he dies, you get to, take your pick of a card, target card. Doesn't have to be the topmost, doesn't have to be the whatever. What else do we have here? We've got this nice big elite unit here, the Harbinger of Eternity. And it is a 5-cost army unit, but it's 3 command, 3 attack, 5 hit points, scholar, and elite. And it says you may play each Necron event card from your discard pile as if it were in your hand. But then it has this interesting forced reaction. After you play a Necron event card from your discard pile, remove that card from the game.
Right.
So, like, my question is, does that mean that particular card goes away? Or, like, I assume that's what that means. It doesn't mean you can't play copies of that card anymore, right?
I would only imagine it's limited to the specific event card which you played, because I think otherwise
it would be like an infinite loop.
It would say, like, remove all copies of that card in your discard pile from the game or something. In mentioning the Scarab Swarm and the Harbinger of Eternity here, something to keep in mind for the Necrons faction, which is also not exactly a new concept, but it's not something we see all the time, is that the order of cards in your discard pile is going to start mattering more. Like, Gift of Isha is, of course, return the topmost Eldar unit back into play. The Scarab Swarm, you can pick any unit from your discard pile, and there's something else that's going to be like, the topmost Necron card or whatever else. So effects like this that are going to allow you to remove cards from your discard pile and rearrange cards in your discard pile, not only is it useful to say, like, if your Reanimating Warriors is destroyed, you can return that to play with the Canoptek Scarab Swarm, you can return it to your hand and then to play through that effect, which makes the Necrons all the more difficult to destroy. The Harbinger of Eternity gives you fantastic value in, replaying your events, but it can also kind of free up a bunch of other effects to happen. So there's just so much synergy in these cards that, it's just fantastic. It strikes me as quite a bit of a ways apart from the core set, where it's like, here's the Raven Guard Speeder, and here's the 10th Company Scout, and these cards don't really interact very much.
Right.
So I'm just very, very curious to see what else there is to come in this box here.
Yeah, I mean, kind of on that note, when you're talking about the discard pile and it's going to matter, there's this cool attachment here, this 2-cost, 2-shield Resurrection Orb. It's war gear. It says attached to an elite Necron unit you control. Reaction: after a combat round at this planet begins, if the topmost card of your discard pile is a non-elite Necron unit, you put it into play at this planet.
Right.
So now it's like, there's the card before, it didn't matter. It was just a target card from your discard pile. Now this is the topmost. And both these cards are interesting too, right? Like this elite, like the text on this elite makes it almost like that's text you would read like on a support or an event. It's just like this constant effect that's in play while he's alive,
Sure.
which is cool. And then, like the Resurrection Orb almost reads like an event, but it's an attachment, and it's just as long as that guy's alive, this thing's going into effect. So if you put that on somebody that's hard to kill, like every combat round, you could be potentially, right, getting... I mean, I don't know how often the topmost card of your discard pile is going to be that, but it looks interesting. There could be ways to manipulate the discard pile that we haven't seen, something like that.
Well, and I mean, we've already started to see some, but just kind of speaking on your point, I think something awesome about the Necrons so far is that these elites, we've only seen the one example in the Harbinger, but it almost looks as though it's kind of a warlord in and of itself, like, Brad has been teasing for quite a long time that there's upcoming support in favor of elites, and once we finish talking about the Necrons, we'll get to a card that just changes everything completely, but it just seems like this is going to be some battlefield commander where it's doing a lot, it's providing a bunch of different crazy card effects. It's not just like a goth knob that sits there and is just some big hulking brute, but it's almost like a sorcerer of something, or something working for you.
Yeah.
Like, the Resurrection Orb, that just strikes me as absolutely nuts. Like, if you've got an elite on top of your discard pile, you could have your Scarab Swarm. When that's destroyed, you could bounce that to your hand, make it all the more likely that there's a dead common Necron on top of your discard pile. If you use something like the Harbinger's ability to replay events that are on top of your discard pile and covering up some of your common Necrons, then that could be a fantastic way to just kind of free up some space. And then what blows me away about the Resurrection Orb is everybody pretty much lost their shit when they saw the forward barracks for Broderick War, in that if you can only kill, say one unit each turn, at the end of the combat round, another Guardsman token pops into play. Granted, your elite has to be sitting at a planet, but this occurs at the beginning of a combat round. And if you've got some Necrons in your discard pile, they're difficult to kill in the first place. When they do get killed, if they can just be returned to play, this just looks absolutely crazy. Combine it with Fallback and the upcoming elite support, and this could be absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I mean, like you were talking about the Scarab Swarm. Like if you have an elite on top of your deck, you just somehow make sure that Scarab Swarm dies, and then he returns the elite, and then he's now the topmost, Necron non-elite unit on your discard pile.
Right.
So then you just get him back in play and get ready for the next time for when they try to kill the elite that's got the orb attached to it in the first place. Like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the Scarab Swarm does have to be destroyed. It can't just be, like, sacrificed, but still,
sure.
I mean, if you put a 2/2 at the first planet, it's not like your opponent's just going to keep indefinitely letting you win battles, trigger battle abilities, and capture planets. So that definitely seems like a value card, and, man, I mean, it seems great. Granted, I mean, there are plenty of ways to work around the Resurrection Orb, like if you clog up the discard pile, if you kill some of their enslaved units. I think it's going to be fascinating. Like, obviously, there's going to be a million different deck building opportunities in regard to, maybe you'll want to include Earthcast Technicians in your deck to fetch your drones, like the Scarab Swarm. Maybe you'll want to be able to dig for your Resurrection Orbs, because in addition to just being crazy, they're a 2-shield icon card. But I think it's going to be tricky just striking some sort of balance between how many Necron units do I want in my deck versus how many Necron, non-Necrons do I want. And there's just so many cards still to come out, and I don't know. All I know is I'm pumped about this deluxe expansion.
Yeah, me too. I want to come back to kind of the discard thing, but you touched on a good point where it's like, just the deck building opportunities alone on this are ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Like, just like you said, I mean, not only do you have to pick, like, who, what factions, plural, do you want to ally with? You have to decide, am I only allying with one? Am I going to ally with two? Is three too many? Like, am I going to go crazy and go 3 or 4?
Right.
Then once you decide that, then there's like so many separate builds within each faction. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to ally with Astra Militarum and go like ranged heavy with, Catachans and Ratlings, or I'm going to instead do like a Steel Legion Chimera and Assault Valkyrie, or like there's just so many crazy deck building opportunities. It's going to be nuts. Like, in fact, I was even talking with Paul Steiner, who runs the database, and like I always try to make my database for my Octagon League website match his form so that he can just pull that data right out of my spreadsheet and plan it into his.
Sure.
And we were talking about like, what are you going to do for like, allies? Like, do you just want to have a field that says multiple and leave it at that, or do you want to have like make it a multiple choice thing so that like with Gorzad and now especially these Necrons, like it's just going to be nuts. The allying options, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a balance between if you include more factions, you've of course got more options, but at the same time, if you've got units of 3 or 4 different factions in your hand, if they don't all belong to the same faction, you can only make one choice on your dial, so it's going to be a really tricky balance. Like, the Earthcast Technician is awesome, so Tau is looking pretty good. I hear Borkon Recruits are pretty useful as well, but then there's the Tallarn Raiders, there's the Elysian Assault Team. We've yet to touch on one of our common Necron units, but why don't you introduce the Mandragora Immortals? So we're also going to see cards that kind of encourage you one way or another to build around certain traits. Like soldiers are something we see a lot in the Astra Militarum and the Space Marines. Warriors and things like that are more likely to be orcs and chaos, some of the more brutish factions. So I just think it's awesome that there are some Necron cards that are likely going to key off of specific traits that are more prominent within certain factions. So I just think it's going to be awesome. Like you were saying, it's like, oh, here's my Chaos Necrons, or here's my Space Marine Necrons. So the possibilities.
Yeah, or like, here's my Chaos and Tau Necrons.
Right.
Like, that's just weird to say,
Right.
But yeah, that card, the Immortals. Before the Immortals, we were talking about the discard pile. There is this 3-cost support, the Particle Whip, and artillery and upgrade are the traits. I don't really know why the hell a whip is a support. That would seem like an attachment, but what the hell do I know?
Yeah, well, it makes me think of, the Inquisitorial Fortress. At least the card art kind of just portrays some giant cannon, like a big artillery thing, but a particle whip is the Necron monolith. I think that's like its, trademark, most iconic bit of weaponry there. But
Gotcha.
Still,
but it's got a cool HQ action here. It says exhaust this support and shuffle any number of unit cards from your discard pile into your deck to deal X damage to a target non-elite army unit. X is the number of cards shuffled into your deck. So, I don't know. There's been some split opinion on this already, like on the Skype thread. And in fact, speaking of Paul, he was like, well, Sam will like it because it seems janky. But I don't know. 3 cost is a little pricey for supports.
Right, and headquarters action is strange.
But
if
right now there's no like real true like mill deck out there that's going to beat you by milling you.
Sure.
But if there ever was, this would just be a big F you to that. I mean, it's pretty cool too. Like you can get, and it says shuffle them back into your deck, not like put on the bottom. So you can have like a few key cards that are already in your trash that you really need back, and next thing you know, they could be like right there ready for you, when you draw the 2 cards. So
yeah, I mean, this is another way. Like, let's say if the top of your deck is clogged with non-Necron units or elite Necron units, and I think that's kind of unlikely there. But I mean, if that happens, shuffle some of those cards into your deck, maybe deal some damage to an enemy unit, and then if you've got your Resurrection Orb in play, that combo works there. And then, kind of going back to the Resurrection Orb itself, I think you need not telegraph it too clearly if you just kind of hold on to it in your hand, and then once the opportunity presents itself, it's like, boom, toss that out onto the table.
Right.
That could be a radical swing, especially like as your last deploy action or something, where it's just like, deal with this, biatch.
Yeah, I mean, this particle whip is interesting. I agree with what you said. Like, I don't know, the headquarters action, it is a little strange, but there are times where the guys are like set up. I mean, right? There's more time. It's more often than you think that there actually wasn't even a battle at the planet you needed because he's just setting up, waiting for the next one, right? So it could, I don't know, it swing a little, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Okay. So, go ahead.
My instinct is that it's going to be too expensive, especially considering you can shield against it. But we'll have to see. Maybe there's something like I had the Beeltan Guardians pop into my mind. If you're allied with Eldar, maybe you could trigger that effect on yourself just to keep putting units into your discard pile. Maybe it's to work with Resurrection Orb. Like if you get those Reanimating Warriors in your discard pile, maybe you return those to play. Maybe you just put them into your discard pile to shuffle them back into your deck. Like the Beeltan Guardians don't hit terribly hard, but maybe they do enough incidental damage here and there that you can use your particle cannon, fueled by their discard effect, to blast some enemy units set up a little bit further down the line. But
right.
I don't know.
Using it on yourself is an interesting mechanic, too.
Sure.
Like, there are cards, well, we'll get to them, but there are cards that let you, they don't want, they benefit by you not controlling a certain, non-Necron faction on the table, so... it might be interesting. But I'll get back to these Immortals here. The 3-cost army unit. It's 1 command, 2 attack, 3 hit points, soldier, and some other weird Necron trait.
Sawtech,
soldier, and Sawtech. Yeah, I don't know. I'm the least versed in Necrons with all 40k fluff. I don't know much about them.
Sure.
So I know they got the families and stuff, right? These families. So Sawtech is probably a family name.
Yeah, a dynasty, I think.
Yeah, dynasty, right.
But for the longest time, the Necron, kind of their calling card was just being completely mysterious creatures and very easy to paint. But yeah, I think they've done a little bit of retconning in regard to the lore, and it was kind of this big, deal with the devil, I think, to save their species. They were dying out and something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, like the Satan or the Catan, right? They made this deal with them, right?
Right.
Yeah. And kind of said, all right, we'll make you be immortal. You help us fight. And then they took their souls and stuck them in these robot skeleton bodies.
Right.
And now they're eternally pissed.
Sure.
Sure. But yeah, so this guy, he's got 2/3, 1 command, soldier, Sawtech, or whatever it is. But he's ranged, and his action is sacrifice a non-Necron soldier unit at this planet to ready this unit. Limit once per phase. So, I don't know. I don't know what I think about that.
Yeah. I think a lot of it depends on what kind of, augmentation effects come out. Like a 2/3 ranged for 3 isn't fantastic, but, people aren't huge fans of playing the Altansar Rangers, but it does definitely change things when you can squeeze off 2 attacks with 1 unit. If there's a bunch of, +1 attack value until the end of the phase type effects, 2 attacks gets all the more desirable. It definitely encourages players into one direction in regard to what their enslaved factions are going to be. If you've got a Borkon recruits that's been out there fighting, your warlord shows up, that soldier is now exhausted. If it's really going to be worthwhile to front load a bunch of damage, that's kind of a nice little option.
Yeah.
I guess it specifies soldier unit. We haven't seen anything in regard to whether or not Necrons can benefit from guardsman tokens. So I don't know. It's cool.
Oh, that's a good point.
Possibility.
Snotlings aren't soldiers, are they?
No, they're just runts, I think.
Runts, that's right. Because Snotling attack is not loyal. Oh, you can't take events though anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think though, are there any common units that make tokens?
No, I think...
I don't think so.
It's all signature, like Straken's Command Squad, Zogwart's Runt Herders, the Gravid Turvagon.
Yeah,
so.
Xavier Split Tongue makes him, but he's loyal.
Right. Right.
Interesting.
And, just because you mentioned Elite specifically, we haven't seen our Necron. I presume there's going to be like a 3-cost Necron Elite, maybe a 4-cost Necron Elite, just in following with the Great Devourer and the core set. But it almost, it feels to me like the Elite that we've seen, that Harbinger of Eternity, is like a unique unit. So I'm just very curious to see what exactly those are going to be like.
Yeah, I imagine they'll get 2 uniques,
Right.
but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with this Immortal, it's like, I don't know how great that is. Like, is it worth sacrificing a body on the table just to get this guy to swing again? I mean, it just depends what other type of discard manipulation they have. We know they're going to have it, and we're only seeing a handful of cards here.
Sure.
So, you can always shuffle those guys back in that you kill with the Particle Whip. But, like, I don't know. It would seem like you have to almost build your deck around making this guy work. Like, you're going to need a fair amount of non-Necron units, and those are going to have to be, like, soldier-specific units.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
We've got an AM spoiler card that we'll touch on a little bit later, but definitely the synergy there is real. Like, let's say, Mandragora Immortals are sitting at a planet, they do their ranged phase thing, deal some damage, then your enemy forgets about them because they're already exhausted. Maybe they kill off some soldier, some warrior you've got. You drop an Elysian Assault team into play at the end of combat, you deal some damage with that, then you sacrifice your assault team, then you attack with this, then you particle cannon that back into your deck, or any number of other things. So there's definitely some options there. Compared to some other card games, it seems like there's a whole hell of a lot of value to be found in pretty subtle effects in Conquest. So, I'm definitely interested in this unit, and I think there's probably much more to it than it at first may seem upon first blush here, but who knows? It's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. So there's a couple events in here too that look pretty cool. One of them is the 0-cost Reanimation protocol. It's got the Robo Cockroach on it here.
Right.
And it's a tactic, action. Oh, it's 1 shield. Action, remove up to 2 damage from a Necron unit you control, and you can only do this. It says max 1 per round, and there was some discussion on Facebook. This doesn't mean you can only move 1 damage per round. It means you can just play this card once per round. It's like Primal Howl, right?
Right.
So
it does sound kind of confusing.
Yeah, it's remove up to 2 damage, max 1 per round. You're so this event, this event is spanned out over 2 game rounds?
Right. It's the previous sentence is nullified by the second sentence. But yeah, no, it's just limit of 1 of these events per round.
Right. So yeah, I don't know. It's not as good as Regeneration.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a great card. But, it is nice sometimes to, I think your gut reaction is I'd just rather shield the 2 damage and, not take it at all.
Yeah.
But this has got 1 shield, so playing it for free is better than using it as the 2 shields, unless it's going to kill something. But if it's just going to wound something and not kill it, then this is kind of a nice thing, because it really messes with their math. Okay, they got that unit, and I need to hit it with this guy and with this guy to kill it. So I'm going to concentrate my swings with these 2 units on that unit. And they do 1, and then you play this, and now it's screwed up their math.
Sure.
So I kind of like it. I mean, for 0 cost, a shield, a good little heal-up effect, it's fine by me.
Well, and this article certainly hasn't given us a ton of Necron cards to take a peek at, but Harbinger of Eternity, if that comes into play, you can play this from your discard pile for the cost of no resources, and being able to have any number of different combat tricks at your disposal in the middle of combat is absolutely fantastic. So if you don't need to save your resources for some sort of healing effect, even though regeneration isn't exactly expensive, you can't, drop that into play in the middle of combat. So I am certainly not going to dismiss a card like this. So,
What's ridiculous is this could be a rare situation, but it could happen. If you have that Harbinger of Eternity in play, if you have 2 reanimation protocols in your hand, that's I hit you. All right, boom, I moved 2 damage. Hey, I'm playing this for my discard pile. I removed 2 damage. hey, I'm going to play the other one and remove 2 damage, and now I'm going to play that from my discard pile and remove 2 damage.
Well, I think that's where that max 1 per round comes into
Oh,
play,
max
though.
1 per round. Yeah, you're right. I got all excited.
It's all good.
Never mind.
It's all
Damn.
good.
All right, well, let's move on to this other event that is not max 1 per round. Although, actually, it technically is. By definition, it's not, but when you read the text, it is.
Right.
So it is the 5-cost Extermination. It's just got 1 shield, and it is a hella expensive event, but it's pretty cool here. Tactic, deploy action. Each non-unique, non-Necron unit at a target planet gets -3 hit points until the end of the phase. Here's where it kind of becomes max 1 per round. It says you must pass during your next deployment turn. So, like, this is something you have to play. Like, you better hope you have a few resources so you can actually make a few plays before you spend $5 to, like, blow your wad on this thing.
Right.
Because you don't necessarily want to make it your first deploy action, because then it's going to be your only deploy action. But, I don't know. It's expensive, right? But, I mean, this is like this kind of, like, damage manipulation that just circumvents shields. It goes right around it.
Yeah. I mean,
like, there's not many non-elite units that have more than 3 hit points. I mean, you've got the Tyranted Warrior, I guess, that comes to mind. I'm sure there's others out there. Fire Warrior Elite, whatever.
Yeah, Assault Valkyrie.
Assault Valkyrie, sure. I mean, there are out there, but like by and large, as the meta stands now, and I think we're already seeing what we've gone through so far, and we'll see even more when we get to the non-Necron cards. They're, I think, trying to push for elites. We've heard talk about how Brad wants for elites. But as it sits now, right, and even as it'll sit in the future, the majority of cards are going to be 3 hit point or less, non-unique, non-elite army units.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. It's only cool, though, like if the -3 will kill it. Because it just says until the end of the phase. And then this is your last move for the phase.
Sure.
So you got nothing else you can do. So, like, if they have a Fire Warrior Elite and a, whatever, I can't even think. Let's just say they're allying with Space Marine, right? If they have a Fire Warrior Elite and a Land Raider, and Blood Angel Veteran, then all you're doing is killing the Blood Angel Veteran.
Yeah.
Because the -3 hit points will go right back up to full hit points once you get to the command phase.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as if this event is the end-all, be-all of things I've ever seen released, but, I mean, going off of what we have in our current meta, like, let's think about it. I'm picturing a Dark Eldar player that it's come down to the final planet of the game. What do they have situated at a planet? They've got 1.5 million Chimera tokens, they've got Siren Zithlex, they've got Slith Mercenaries, Incubus Warriors, maybe you've got Blood Angels Veterans, Honored Librarians, all manner of other things, a bunch of, if you've got elites have a big reservoir of hit points, you're going to want them involved in combat. They're probably going to have some damage tokens already amassed onto them. Maybe you've got a particle whip in your HQ that can conveniently damage some higher than 3 hit point units, and then as a deploy action, once you've, done all your piece, if you've got some Necrons of your own sitting at a planet, you can just drop this and potentially clear out a ton of the opposition. Like you said, no opportunity to shield, no real opportunity to react. This doesn't count as a unit being destroyed through damage. This just strikes me as extraordinarily strong, potentially.
Yeah, I think situationally it is like game over, I win. I'm not sure how often those situations are going to arrive. I think they're probably going to be more often than I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But because like you said, there are many games, right, where they're ready to rock on this winning planet for them. But they've got, like, some dudes that are wounded. They've got, that big old... Lehman Russ barely treading onto the planet. It's all hanging on by a thread.
Right.
Actually, that's a joke. I've never seen a Lehman Russ in the last 7 months. But, yeah. So I think, like, it doesn't say army units. So it could be tokens, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And I absolutely love the artwork. That is some gory shit. Those what are these guys called? The skin flayers or
I think
something?
the flayed ones. But
Yeah, the
yeah.
flayed ones. They like kill people and then wear their skin to like they think it's gonna like help them, be
Yeah.
a real person again or whatever.
I mean, to everybody listening to the MP3 version of this out there, you need to see this card. It's literally like a Necron warrior that's wearing some tattered, kind of orangish yellow, just dilapidated, rotting apart cloth. And
No, that's the skin.
oh, is that actually skin?
Yeah, like
Okay.
the flayed ones, they wear the other people's skin that they kill.
Okay.
So
Well,
he's like, yeah, dilapidated skin.
but yeah, I mean, he's quite clearly holding like someone that's been, skinned, hopefully skinned alive, and it looks as though he's just eating like a giant chunk of just bloody dripping meat off of his like scythe hand.
Yeah, that is
So
awesome.
it is it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it is really cool. Really cool artwork.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a strong card, man. I do. I mean, I don't think it's crazy game breaking. So like, I guess maybe I should have sounded like I liked it more. But and I do like it. It's just it's not game breaking, but it is situationally huge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've got this. Let's see. There's a couple more we haven't got to yet. So the 3-cost attachment, 1 shield, the Mind Shackle Scarab. It is a drone. I do like how there's all these drones and you can get the ECT in play. It's a good call, Mitch. With the
Right,
ECT.
right.
Yeah, attached to a non-elite army unit. If attached unit's faction symbol matches your enslaved faction, so that would mean the enslaved, non-Necron faction that you have showing on your enslavement dial for that turn.
Right.
If it matches that, then you exhaust this attachment to gain control of attached unit until the end of the phase. I really like this card.
Yeah.
I mean, $3 is expensive, but like, let's just take Blood Angel Veteran or Honored Librarian, for example. Like, to kill one of those outright, like, let's say, I don't know, you have to spend $3, maybe $4, maybe $5 on a Tzeentch's Firestorm, or, you've got a attack with your Zerathor Flamer and then destroy it or sacrifice it, so like it's already costing you resources to remove these units, right?
Right.
So $3 doesn't seem that much when it's actually like, if it's a 3-cost unit, then you just gain $3. Like you spent the 3 to kill it on their side, and now you basically got it for free on your side. So I think people look at $3 and they're like, oh, that's expensive. But I think if you think about it, it's actually a pretty good bargain. A lot of times it's going to cost you more than 3 just to kill a 3-cost unit.
Oh yeah.
But this way you basically kill it from their side of the table and then bring it over to yours. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think this strikes me as potentially incredible. Non-elite sucks, but it's fair. If this was elite, that would probably just be insane.
Striking Ravener. Take it. Yeah. Black Legion Helldrake. I'll take it for 3. Thank you.
Right. But, I mean, this just strikes me as nuts. It's like, oh, Honored Librarian, I'll steal that. So all of a sudden, instead of taking an enormous amount of damage, that's such a convenient answer to it. Granted, you might not be able to deploy some of your, deck's chosen enslaved faction that round as a result. But if you steal your enemy unit, then they have to deal with it. They can't just like, oh, I'm going to wait until the end of the combat round and then I lose control of it. It's no, they have to kill their own unit or retreat and give up the planet. They give up the battle ability. So they're either killing off their own dude, or if the guy survives the battle, like if, I don't know, I guess there's not really any reason that you would retreat with their unit, but like if your opponent retreats because they want to regain control, it's not like this attachment falls off of the unit and then you can do it again next turn if that's what your heart tells you should do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it's pretty, like, imagine putting this on a volatile Pyrovore.
Right.
Like they spent $3 to get a good 3/3 and a command that could hit hard, and then when it dies, it'll hit you back. And now you just, for $3, turn that whole thing around on them.
Yeah, that's
pretty
insane.
Yeah,
value.
pretty cool. Yeah. So last up, we've got the 1-cost support. How do you say this, Mitch?
Let me scroll down. The
sorry.
Sawtech Complex.
Sawtech
Think of
Complex.
like you're sautéing something.
Sauteing. Well, this we already went over the Necron who was sauteing this poor bastard whose skin he's wearing, but I wonder if he's Sawtech. But anyway, the Sawtech Complex, $1 or one cost, I should say, one resource. Location, it is a limited card. I think it's the only limited Necron card we've seen.
Yes.
Reaction, after you deploy a unit from a non-Necron faction, if you control no other units from that faction, gain one resource or draw one card. So my gut tells me that this is like, I don't know, it's not going to trigger more than once per turn, right? I mean, pretty much.
Under a lot of circumstances, yes. Although I think you can kind of cheat that if you ambush multiple units.
Oh, right. But doesn't ambush count as deploy?
Yes, and this does specify deploy.
Okay, right. But it says you have to control no... Oh, well, okay. Right. Like if something died and then you ambushed it, okay. Because I'm sitting here thinking, well, you can't change your enslavement dial in the middle of a turn. But I guess if you had your enslavement dial set on Tau, you could play a Tau card, have this thing trigger, and then when the Tau dies, drop in, I don't know, maybe the Ennui Prelate's loyal, but whatever, you know what I'm saying, something like that.
Right.
But I think the big use here is the draw one card. Like you're right, it's commonly accepted theory that one card is worth about $2.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the prevailing opinion.
Like this is, if you get this early, or even if you get it mid-game, you're taking a card and a resource, but you could potentially, get 4, 5, maybe 6, maybe worst case, 3 cards out of it. So I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. It just depends on what other supports they have to compete for deck slots, but it does seem pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, compared to, say, I think this is an approximation of all the different faction-specific army unit resource cost reducers, but this encourages, diversity in deck building. Like, I think my first read of this card was like, okay, if you don't control any other units from that faction, that's when you get the benefits. So if I played a Tau last turn, maybe I want to play Orc this turn, something like that. So then you get the bonus. But it just strikes me as like, if your first deploy action is going to be of whatever faction, you get that bonus. Then you make sure that unit gets killed in combat, and then next turn, you play a unit of that faction. The situation I was thinking of earlier is like, let's say Eager Recruit, not loyal, so during combat you've got at least one resource. I play Eager Recruit, I attack and I kill your dude. New combat round or whatever else happens. Oh, I kill your Eager Recruit. Okay, well, I'm going to play another one because now I don't control any Space Marines. I generate another resource for another Eager Recruit, or I draw a card for next turn. This isn't unique either, and I think that is quite strong. For the price, I think it's really difficult to go wrong because this can afford you profit pretty quickly, and I see this as being a pretty competitive card. You can run promotion as a Necron, but apart from that, unless they get something else crazy for their limited slot, this seems pretty strong.
Well, Promethean mind now.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all we've got for this. Like the spoilers that were spoiled in their entirety as far as Necrons go.
Sure.
But I guess there's like still a few things we don't know. Like we know a little bit about one of the warlords, right? He's in the card fan. Why don't you take that one, Mitch, since I can't even pronounce Sawtech. This one's way beyond me.
I think it's Enric the Traveler, so I can only imagine it's going to be a matter of time. Who knows, maybe a week, next couple weeks, we start to see spoilers for the Necron Warlords, but Enric the Traveler is soldier trait, so maybe his signature squad will have something to do with that, but who knows. He's got deploy action, and it's partially concealed, but it says something along the lines of deploy the topmost probably unit card in a target discard pile, limit once per phase. So if he can do that, if he can just allow you to put units into play from your discard pile or your opponent's discard pile, granted it would have to be the top, but strikes me as options are always nice.
And yeah, I mean, it seems like this action is worthless on the first turn.
Sure.
Probably. Unless they're playing Splintered Path Acolyte or Murder of Razor Wings and then they sack it with Pack of Homunculi or something. But I think in 99.9% of games, it's going to not be doing shit on the first turn.
Probably. I mean, there's a little bit of, say, again, ambush option, like the Eager Recruit thing. Oh, I kill your Eager Recruit. Well, I return it to play. So,
if they have a card that lets you ambush, like play a unit from hand, deploy a unit from hand as though it had ambush, that would be huge.
Yeah, that would...
Because then he could just, like, hold on... Because it says limit once per phase.
Yes.
So, like, you know, he can do it in the deploy phase, and then he can... If you did have an Eager Recruit or Ennui Prelate or, you know, whatever, one of these few ambushing units, he could do it again in the combat phase. But it would be really baller if they had something that let you... I doubt they will. That seems to be like Subject Omega's thing. But
yeah.
It would be cool.
Yeah, who knows? And, you know, I don't know how many Tyranid cards we actually saw in the Great Devourer, but I think this was a total of 8 cards we saw spoiled, not counting that card fan. Or no, sorry, 10, because it was 4 units and then 2 of each other card type. But there's much, much more to come. I don't have that much experience in regard to tabletop 40k, but I'm sure that there's some sort of deep striking Necron unit. They're kind of known for teleportation and phasing in and phasing out in addition to everything else we've already covered. Something the article addressed that we haven't really seen examples of is that the Necrons are supposed to have incredibly advanced Gauss weaponry that kind of flays things apart at a molecular level. So they're supposed to have some sort of mechanic that allows them to circumvent shielding or damage prevention. So in addition to no mercy, it seems like there are going to be a lot of interesting options for them. So all of this stuff is just so dependent on what else there is to see.
Yeah, sounds painful, whatever that is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We do see a Destroyer Cultist, which is a signature army unit, but I don't think... Let's see, is Enric here? Is that a 0-1 on his card?
Yeah, I don't know. You can't see anything other than just his name, soldier, and part of his deploy action, but that's the only stats you can see.
Yeah, I just... Yeah, so who knows if the Destroyer Cultist is going to be Enric here's signature unit, but we can't even see cost, we can't see command icons.
Oh, you know what, Mitch? It is going to be the signature unit because there's the little yellow... Well, it's going to be either his or the other warlord's signature unit. Right.
I was going off of the card number. I guess in the very bottom right, we can see it's 002, but then we don't know if Enric here is like warlord card number 1
or card number right.
7 or whatever.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. All right, well, we got some other cards. Unless you got anything you want to wrap up on the Necrons with, Mitch.
No, I'll just say I'm extraordinarily excited. It seems like even within the faction, there's going to be a tremendous amount of diversity, a lot of different deck building options, so I'm thrilled. I definitely think it's not going to just be like, okay, here's the one viable Necron build out the gate. It seems like, hopefully both of the warlords are going to be on approximately equal footing competitively, and then within that, I'm sure there's probably going to be a soldier-focused Necron deck and maybe a discard pile recursion theme. So it just seems like there are probably several different viable archetypes built within the Necron faction. So I think coming out the gate, they're looking good to me.
Yeah, they look good. I mean, I think you're right. There's probably going to be like one soldier kind of bully build and then one more like control-focused manipulation build. But they look fun, man. And again, like you touched on, I think this just the possibilities that open up for deck building are ridiculous. I'm really gonna have fun with that.
Oh yeah.
All right, Mitch. So we've got a couple more spoilers that are spoiled in their entirety here. We'll start with the Astra Militarum Standard Bearer. It is a 3-cost army unit. 1 command, 2/2. So a little high for what it is. Soldier trait, but it does have pretty cool text here. So while you control a non-Astra Militarum warlord, you may deploy this unit from your hand as if it had ambush. Reaction: after this unit enters play, ready an army unit you control at this planet. So obviously it's synergy with the Necrons, right?
Right.
But you've also got use for it in Orc, Space Marine, and Starblaze.
Right.
So it's kind of cool. There's like a, whatever that is, ATRT Walker in the background. I don't know.
Right.
Sticking with the Force Awakens theme here
Sure.
today. You know, $3 a little high for 2/2, but like you said, if you had, I don't know, if you had Baleful Mandrakes in your deck, like let's say you were playing Necrons and you had the Immortal in your deck and Baleful Mandrakes, and then you can like swing with the Mandrake, ambush this guy in, ready the Mandrake, swing with your Immortal, sack this guy, ready to, you know what I'm saying? Like there's just these crazy possibilities to do in Necrons. And I think even not in Necrons, he's solid. Like, what came to mind, of course, was like the, what do you call it? Canadian Mortar Squad. But, of course, they're loyal, so you probably wouldn't have them in the deck with this guy.
Yes.
Like, there's no room for this guy, in my opinion, in an Astra Militarum deck.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I think it kind of follows the Necron theme, where it's you want to be splashing all kinds of weird faction mixes, which again follows that diversity theme, and I just think is awesome.
Yeah, I do too. But I think this could be cool, like even, you know, like in Orcs, like if you were running an Orc Warlord and you had the upcoming huge chain Choppa on somebody and like they couldn't ready, but then you could just bam, deploy this guy, ambush him in and ready that thing again. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Cool.
I mean, note you can target elites. Let's say you're playing Nosdrag. You've got some big beefy orc guy that's got a bunch of damage tokens on it. You know, he takes his brutal swing, wipes some enemy unit off the face of the planet. You drop this guy into play. He does his attacking thing. You ready your big brutal orc attacker. The options are crazy. I mean, he's expensive, but like he could get some work done.
Yeah, and I think it's in here, right in the article. Didn't they say that basically every faction is, well, other than perhaps
get a common
Tyranids,
unit,
is going to get a common unit?
Yes.
But didn't it say, I could be wrong, I thought maybe it said that not only were they going to be common, but they were going to be like made to play outside of their own warlord faction.
I don't know if it mentioned anything specifically about that, but it's definitely going to be a common unit for each faction.
Oh yeah, here it says it. I found it. Sorry. Unlike other army units, these units will grow more powerful when their warlord belongs to a different faction. So there you go.
Well, awesome. That's exactly what I wanted.
So it says, of course, you can take command of these units with Necrons or simply ally with their faction in the conventional way, but in either case, these new units are potent warriors for your cause. So there you go.
Sick. And just to anybody screaming at their headphones or their monitor, I think that little walker in the background is probably closer to an ATST or ATPT. Just had to have my piece there.
There you go. Go for it. I apologize.
No worries. But, you know...
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Sam, there's an interesting card included in this article that kind of set a fire under the community's ass. And why don't you walk us through it?
This is my favorite card of the pack. Favorite thing we've seen yet. It is the one-cost event called Backlash. One shield tactic. Interrupt. When your opponent triggers an ability that targets an elite unit you control, cancel its effect. Then, if the ability was triggered from an army unit, destroy it. This is the big fuck you, Clavex. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. And in fact, on the Facebook page, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but I believe it is, or at least he goes under Wharf Styx Fury.
Yeah.
He had this great, like very crudely done Photoshop where it's just like this Titan, and he replaced the orc with the Clavex, and he's just smacking him. So.
You know, Again, not to talk too much about the art on a podcast that's, primarily audio. There is a video version available where this image will be on the screen right now, but not only is this an incredibly brutal effect, but it just looks like this Titan is so incredibly pissed, and it is just wrecking this orc.
Yeah, it looks awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, pardon the language, but it's just like, fuck you, man. It's like, that's what he looks like. That's what the card says. Like, this is just, I mean, and I joke about Clavex, right? But, I'm not joking. I'm serious about Clavex. But
yeah, I mean,
it is a big FU
it's a
Clavex
powerful card.
But there are other really good things, like Zerathir Flamers, Sicarius' Chosen, Veteran Barbaros. So, like, and there's a ton more, right? Like, even... you can't destroy this unit, but even Eldorath can't exhaust your unit if you play Backlash.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
I don't know.
Just think of it, okay, it's neutral, therefore any faction can use it. Tyranids, Necrons, doesn't matter. You pay 1 resource, it costs you 1 card. If your opponent tried to Archon's Terror, your Striking Ravener, or whatever, you invest 1 resource compared to their 2, and you cancel that effect. And then, if it's something like an army unit, if they want to target one of your elites, they run a huge risk. Like, the Clavex War Leader still destroys an Assault Valkyrie like nobody's business. It's still ambushed into play and being fantastic, but if your opponent has, like, the balls, the audacity to dare to try to kill off one of your units, or move a unit, or anything like that, it's like... I really hope they don't have Backlash in hand, but I'm going to take the risk. And then it's like, boom, you're fucked. Your unit's dead. So This just strikes me as crazy.
I mean, I haven't played it in a long time, but that whole, like, orc, elite heavy, fallback, teleporter pad deck, just put this in there. Because, like, boom, that didn't kill me. Oh, you try again? Okay, fall back. I mean, like, this just adds another layer of awesomeness to that whole... I mean, I think it makes elites so much better in general. I think it actually does pair well with fallback, because now you've kind of got like 6 cards you can count on to save your ass, which is way better than 3 in a deck of 50, And I just think this makes elites so great. But that orc, the orc example came to mind because it's like already kind of the best way to get the elites back into the fight.
Right.
So I don't know. I love it, and I already built up a new, just in the spirit of our last episode we just did, I built a new janky elite deck that I called the Big Nasty. And it is, I decided to use Kugath, but I've got like 3 promotions, 1 Plague Father's Banner, but I've got 3 fallbacks, 3 of these backlashes, 3 Promise of Glory, of course the 2 Fetid Haze. I've got the cost reducers, Turbulent Rifts, of course the Vile Lab. But like to go with this whole like Turbulent Rift, Backlash, Fallback, and then of course I got the Splinter Path Acolytes and the Promise of Glory to get these things. I think I have 14 elites in the deck. And I played it last night, and I did lose on the 7th planet. But only because I got greedy, and when I triggered Yvarn to get a Helldrake for free, he put in the Striking Ravener, and then the next turn he promptly deployed Regeneration onto it and Heavy Venom Cannon onto it.
Ouch.
So that kind of hurt, but it was still like really fun. I never really had a problem with command or resources or anything like that. And it was ridiculous. It's not that great of a deck, and if I want to make it even approaching decent, I'm going to have to really fine-tune it. But just the fact that like it's an actually viable deck that like can work and can somewhat maybe hold its own, even if it's not like this great 50% or better win rate. The fact that like that even is a thing is ridiculous to me.
Yeah. I think what I like most about this card is, I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox for a moment, but a lot of people cried out, Clavex War Leader is broken. It's ruining the game. It's way too strong. Note that there have been some huge delays in getting expansions out to people. Like, in the amount of time that I started my channel compared to, like, today, we've seen a grand total of 1 Deluxe Expansion and 1 War Pack come out, and I just put something like my 165th video online the other day, so there's definitely been a bit of a pause. But considering how long this had to have been in development and how long this was on the table, I'm sure that, it could have been like one day Brad was sitting like, oh, I'm going to design this Klavex War Leader. Boy, it sure is strong. I should design another card that can counter enormously powerful effects like this. And it's not like he was personally responsible for this big delay or anything, so it just seems like the community was starting to lose faith and trust in our dev team, and all of a sudden it's like just this huge sigh of relief where it's like, no guys, your trust is totally well founded, we know exactly what we're doing with this game. If something seems broken, it's not going to stay that way for long, because now all of a sudden Backlash exists. Everybody was shitting all over elites and thinking that they were just hot garbage, but now all of a sudden it's just like, no, relax, it's not just common units that are going to dominate this game forever. Talking to Brad at Worlds, he's like, Kith probably isn't going to get any additional, tools to play with this upcoming cycle. She's probably going to fall out of the spotlight. Elites are going to rise to prominence and have their day in the sun. It just seems like in the space of one article, like, my God, my enthusiasm and passion for this game has just been completely, elevated to 11. So
Yeah, to 11. Yeah, totally. I'm with you, man. I mean, and it's not like this card is an auto include 3 of in every deck. By no means is it not, because there's still so many viable, like, good swarm decks or mid-cost decks or whatever. But if you're like me and you like elites and you like crazy shit, then this looks really fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I am a little, like, we talked about this earlier, like, I think on an earlier episode, Mitch, or maybe like when Brian and Scott had us on together, we talked about it there. I can't remember where, but
of the First Planet podcast,
of the First Planet podcast fame, friends of the show. But we talked about how, like, what can we do to fix Klavex? And of course, someone brought up make an event that counters Klavex's effect and it's neutral, so everybody can get it.
Sure.
And so look, like, I'm still giving this card a 10 out of 10. But maybe I'll give it like a 9.9, because the one bad thing is it does increase deck homogenization, right?
Right.
So that's a little kind of like, too bad. But like, that is such a small point that, like, I can get over it. I really don't give a shit. This is a great card.
Because, I mean, some people were like, well, I guess every deck from now on is going to be 3 Rogue Traders, 3 Void Pirates, 3 Promotions, 3 Backlash, and then X number of copies of Fallback and No Mercy, and every deck is going to be the same. But I just think this affords incredible possibilities. Like you're saying, it's not going to be every deck.
It's not going to be in every deck. There's no need for it. And even in some decks, I doubt it'll be a 3 of.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, most decks are still only running the 3... most decks are only running 3 elites. Now, if we see this push where elites are going to get bigger, you might take that up to 6. You might be nuts and take that up to 9. You might follow my lead and take it up to 14. But in those 14 or 9 case decks, maybe you run 3 of them. But if you've only got 6 in the deck, there's no need for 3. Yeah. So, and like we've already seen, just with the release of Tyranids and with the, Decree of Ruin starting to head our way now, we've already seen, like, how it's not the straight up 3 Void Pirate, 3 Rogue Trader, 3 Promotion. There are a lot of decks that don't do that. And I think as the card pool continues to grow, even Backlash, as great as it is, will probably be like one of these things. It's not like, you got to have it.
Oh, I guarantee.
Yeah.
But, when it came to designing an event like this, and everybody thought, it sure would be great if every faction had access to some effect that would counter Klavex War Leader, let me just be somebody to say I did not expect it would be this strong. Like, outright destroy, it just seems great. And it's not as if this is some like small incidental change. Like Lucky Warpaint is pretty subtle. It's attached unit is immune to enemy events or something like that. That's pretty reined in, that's pretty subdued, didn't blow my mind. It's useful for sure, but Backlash is just it's a hell of an effect.
Yeah, I don't think Lucky Warpaint's going to be the meta defining card of this cycle / Deluxe Expansion.
No. But as they say, fear is the mind killer, and if your opponent is playing in dread of a possible Backlash, whether or not you've got 3 copies of the card, 1 copy, or 0 copies, it's definitely something that they're going to be terrified of, and it's definitely going to play hell with your opponent mind games wise.
Yeah, I would like to, even if I had none in hand and I had like an elite, like I was going up against Kith and I had an elite with 1 damage on it, and I had like 1 resource left in my HQ. I'd just like to like kind of put my finger on it and just like move it around and smile at him.
That's
know?
right. That's right.
Just
maintain eye contact.
Yeah, maintain eye contact. Exactly. This will be a great card, man. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Absolutely nuts. It just, so many new options. The Necrons look great. Backlash looks insane. I can scarcely wait to see all of our different common units for all the other factions. And the Necron elites, I am thrilled to see what they are. And the same thing with uniques. It just seems like, Archon's Terror is taken down another peg. So many cards. This game, like, good God, Sam. I love this game.
Yeah,
so
this is fun. This was a good announcement, man. This was, I mean, it was a little strange because, right, like we just got the Archon Slain More a week ago, basically, right?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, within a week, 2 big announcements, but this was, I think, something that really kind of energized the community, and very exciting stuff, man. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I mean, like I say, I already played a game with the proxied Backlash last night, so I'm excited.
Sure. Well, I guess there's still a little bit of information to be gleaned from this article. We've got our second card fan here. What is there to see? Any hopes and dreams for our 2 remaining sort of spoiled common units?
Yeah, we got this 2-cost air-cased courier Tau army unit. You can't see much, although I can make out that he's got the wuss trait just by looking at him. He's a 1 command, 1 attack, 3 HP guy. So for 2, that just seems like, I assume he actually is the soldier trait, or maybe the Chasseur trait or something. I don't know.
Sure.
And it just says, while you control, I'm going to assume control something, unit gains flame, something. So, I mean, I imagine that could be like, if you control a certain type of Tau or trait unit, this guy gains flying because he's the whole air-cased courier guy.
I assume.
Then, combat action, something, move and attack, something, control at this something unit. I mean, yeah, there's too much covered to make out what his little action is, sure. But I don't know, flying might be cool.
Yeah, well, you mentioned he looks kind of scrawny. He's a courier, so maybe he works for the UPS. It looks like he's wearing brown, so it fits.
What can brown do for you?
Exactly. Maybe it can help you gain flying.
Yeah, I'll shit on your brown with my Backlash, baby. That's what I'll do.
Right. How dare I make myself gain flying?
Yeah.
Boom.
And then the other thing is this Swarmling Termagant. So it's a 2-cost army unit. It has the Leviathan trait. And all we can see is when this something Termagant token, the number at this planet. So it probably means, I'm going to say it's like when this unit either attacks or is declared a defender, something's going to key off like some numerical boost based on the number of Termagant tokens at the planet or something maybe. Who knows? Too tough to tell.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tongue twister. Like swarmling instead of swarming is weird.
Yeah, swarmling. I don't know what that is. Is that like swaddling and swarming and something Termagants? Who knows?
Swarmling. I don't know. I mean, it makes me think of almost like Hormagaunts, I think would be more likely to swarm. But in any case, Termagant Sentry was, I think it's readied when a Termagant token is destroyed at its location.
Yeah.
Clearly it's going to do something with tokens, so a little tool for the Swarm Lord. Maybe it does something to help Old One-Eye benefit from tokens, but, who knows? It would be pure conjecture and speculation, and at the rate that we've been getting articles, maybe in the time that it takes for me to edit this episode, we'll actually have this card spoiled, so right. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's all we got out of the article, but I'm really pleased with it. It looks really cool. I think it does definitely give credence to what Brad said at Worlds, which was, I want elites to make a comeback.
Right.
And if he did say to you that Kith might not be getting a lot of love, this could also be proof of that with Backlash. Yeah. But it looks cool, man. I think the deck building mechanics for Necrons are, like I've said, really going to be fun and mind bending. So yeah, should be cool. What about you, man? What do you think? What are your kind of Final thoughts on the whole deal.
I guess my first thought is, like, could Worlds 2016 look any different than Worlds 2015 was my first thought. Like, you know, Kith and Space Marine are what we saw now, and all of a sudden it's like, maybe we'll see a Necron, maybe we'll see a Tyranid, maybe the top deck is going to be Kugoth using elites, maybe it'll even be some kind of like Commander Starblaze thing. Broderick Ward came out and he just looks incredible. Chaplain Mavros blew my mind, so I can scarcely express how shocked and awed I am at all the diversity, the amount of just deck building variety we're bound to see. You know, I don't think that Worlds 2016, I could totally be wrong, but I don't think it's going to come down to, well, you know, the number one Packmaster Kith deck is running one more copy of Archon's Palace than is the number two Packmaster Kith deck. And, you know, granted, that's hyperbole there. Our Worlds 2015 didn't look anything like that, but I would be shocked if it's just Ragnar, Kith, and Eldorath, you know, in like the top four or whatever it happens to be. So
yeah, I mean, you know, I was thinking kind of like what you said there, and if they can really make elites like a thing, like, because this isn't going to be the only. It's not like Brad says, I want to make elites better and more playable, and he's going to make one card. I doubt that's what he's going to do.
Right.
You know, it says there's other neutral cards in this, like there's going to be one each. So you got one, this is the one event, you're going to have one army unit, one support, one attachment. There could be other neutral cards that bump up these elites. And if that's the case, you know, there's going to be more reason to play him. And it wouldn't surprise me if, like, although he'll be relatively new, it wouldn't surprise me if, like, like an elite heavy Mavros deck made a strong showing, because
he's got the built-in elite.
He's got a built-in elite. So he's already got that starting. We already know he's going to be tough as hell to kill. Between Indomitable, Iron Halo, Unstoppable, he already looks bonkers. You throw in a few, like, elite, you know, even if you want to go back to old school, like Land Raider or, you know, this Fire Drake Terminator or whatever else they got coming, you throw in Fallback and Backlash already with the great Space Marine tricks and the great Space Marine defense added to Unstoppable. I think Mavros is one of these. I think he's going to be a great warlord. And again, that could all change once he comes out and you actually play him. But on paper, he looks solid. You know, I think he's one of those warlords like Kugath and even Zogwart. Again, Zogwart kind of gets underloved and underrepresented, but he's a really good warlord. And these guys can stand on their own, right? They can go toe-to-toe with these armies, like Kugath with the move damage and, you know, Zogwart with creating these snots. And I think Mavros is going to be right in that league, but he's going to be way better than them because of the faction he's in. And like you said, he starts with that elite, right? I mean, don't you think that, like, a Mavros elite, not maybe heavy, crazy deck, but like a 6 or 7 or maybe 8 elite cards in the deck kind of deck could just wreck house with what we've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, it may well do that. Say, like, Land Raider is an elite, right?
Yeah, Land Raider's elite.
So that could make a resurgence where it's like, hey, guess what? All of my units are immune to events. And your opponent's like, well, guess what? Your Land Raider's not immune to events. And it's like, oh, really? Backlash.
I'm going to empty my Imperial Knights exhaust port all over your Clavex War Leader here. Yeah. Backlash. Looks fun, man.
And Backlash features prominently a Knight Titan on the card. Maybe we end up getting some powerhouse Space Marines, you know, elite, like some 10-cost monster.
I was thinking, like, if they had, like, if they made a Knight or a Titan a card, like, how crazy would it have to be? Like, you know, we've already seen, I mean, they couldn't even, I don't know. Like, they can do whatever they want. But from, like, a fluff standpoint, there's no way they can make a Titan a card, right?
Yeah.
But they could make a Knight. They could make an Imperial Knight, like what we see here, a card.
Sure.
And so, like, you know, you see this Dreadnought, right? It's an 8/8. Like, I don't know. But I bet you will see one, right? I think we're going to see big elite. It's not like they're just going to come out with elite support to make the ones that already exist better. They want to give us new shiny toys to play with. So there's going to be fun stuff in this coming cycle and in this box.
Sure. And, for all we know, we could see crazy elites that change everything. Like you say, Titans couldn't be done in the card version. Like, there exist Titans on tabletop 40K, and instead of, a strength category, like instead of 1 through 10 in regard to how hard your weapon hits, it's like an entire different category. So maybe instead of dealing damage, we could someday see Titans where it's like, instead of exhausting, you just tap this unit and you remove X enemy army units from the battlefield or something like that. Like, it could just be insane.
Yeah, it would have to be expensive, right? Like that, isn't it the Tyrannid that's already $10, $10 that you can...
burrowing Trigon?
Yeah, burrowing troglodyte. So like, it would have to be expensive. Or I'd love to see like I can't remember what the name of the miniature is. I think it's just called like Khorne, Lord of Skulls. It's that Chaos miniature that's like, a foot tall, and it's like this giant tank on the bottom half, and then it's like a giant Chaos Space Marine on the top half.
I can picture it.
Yeah, it's like
if
a Centaur was half Space Marine, half tank, then it's like that. But it's huge. It's like giant, I would love to see that as a card. That would be cool.
It is indeed called the Lord of Skulls. And for those of you watching at home, I'll go ahead and insert an image of that miniature, but it's almost like a soul grinder, except it's holding a giant axe.
Yeah.
It's got an enormous cannon where its abdomen should be, plasma cannon, in its opposite arm, and then it's got some giant fuel canisters on top of a tank, so it's definitely a little bit extravagant and over the top, but you know what? When you've got to sell incredible miniatures, it looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like bigger than an Imperial Knight, but smaller than a Titan would be, obviously. So it'd be cool if every faction got like a big, fat, ridiculous unit. So elite unit, but yeah, man, I'm excited.
Looking real good. Conquest LCG, hell of a game, Sam.
Yeah.
I'm pretty pumped about it myself. So I guess, that's the extent of our article. The Necrons look great. Elites look like they're going to kick all kinds of ass. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to throw out there?
Well, yeah, just one last thing here. Coming up real soon, we've got the Winter 2016 Octagon League. The Black Crusade is going to start up soon. So registration will open on Sunday, December 26th. So just head over to blackcrusadeleague.blogspot.com. Everything you need to know is there. The FAQ, the league rules, how to register, a little bit about us and the league, all that stuff. So if you're interested in organized league play, 1 game a week for 6 weeks, then we move on to Top Cut. It's a great way to get some games in against some. We got some good players in there. I mean, you guys know the drill. I spat about this shit every time I'm on something. So anyway, you know the drill, but I'm really looking forward to another season. I'd love to see it get bigger, especially with all these new cards. I've updated my spreadsheets and everything for the upcoming packs that we're going to see. So I'm excited. So yeah, drop by Black Crusade League and check us out.
Yeah, should be absolutely fantastic, and what a conveniently easy to remember URL.
Yeah, better than the old orc speech there.
You're listening to OCTG in the WA.
Yeah, coming to you live from the Traxxas sector.
WAAAGH Radio.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you ever have seen the movie Private Parts. It's like the story of Howard Stern's rise to fame. There's a scene where like Paul Giamatti is teaching him how to like properly say the call letters. He's like WNBC, and like Howard Stern can't get it. And every time I said WAG, I always thought of that, like WAAGH. So yeah. Anyway, convenient URL. Come on over, check us out.
Yeah. Well, Sam, as always, thank you so much for coming on, for doing the Tyrantcast with me. And to all you viewers, all you listeners out there, thank you so much for checking out yet another episode. Be sure to let us know in the comments what your own thoughts are about our upcoming Necrons, about the Elite support, all of this exciting news. What are your wildest hopes and dreams for Worlds 2016? Do you think that we're actually going to be getting the Necrons during our first quarter of 2016? But in closing, thank you so much for listening. If you did enjoy the Tyrantcast, be sure to engage with this content, leave an iTunes review. It's going to help expose more people to this incredible game. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. It's the Hive Tyrant. If you want to get in touch with me, feel free to do so through Twitter or on Facebook. Sam is there as well. And if you want to write in a question to the show, we didn't really have anything for a mailbag this episode, but we would love to hear from you through email, conquesthivetyrant@gmail.com, or just send us a tweet, send us a Facebook message. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, I would encourage you to check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/thehivetyrant. And as always, I'm ever on the lookout for people to send in recorded games of themselves playing Conquest, trying unconventional decks, experimenting with some of our upcoming warlords, whether it's just a brand new war pack or a proxy. Be sure to get in touch, reach out. But as always, thank you so much for listening. And once again, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good New Year.
Okay, I'm sure this will all edit together in post just fine, but okay. Sam, there has been. I have you now.
That's really good. I couldn't hold it together.
The power of what is it? The power to destroy a planet is insignificant to the power of the Force. All right.
Oh, you gotta edit that in at the end. The blooper reel.
Let's see here. Sam, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Sam, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. I don't know. No, I am your father. All right.
That's good. I am altering the deal. Pray I do not alter it again.
Right.